Welcome to another episode with Tibor Stefan, the Chief Revenue Officer at Zeotap. Good to meet you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Yanis.
Well, you've had a very long and successful career in all things enterprise sales, starting at IBM, where you've been focused on 7 to 8 figure deals. Then you spent 5 years at BMC, where you experienced a lot of, farming, to then lead sales at LZ Labs, where you were 100% focused on new logos, and now, since almost 2 years, the Chief Revenue Officer at Zeotap. Tell us a bit more about your experience in enterprise sales and one of the things you think is most important and should be the main topic of our podcast today.
Yeah, so as you said, it's quite a long time. It's if I think about it, it's like almost 18 years in SaaS sales now. It's basically like half of my life. Various different roles with different challenges. I mean, each and every one of us unique, from like large corporations down to like very small startups where we're basically like starting the go-to-market team. So like very, very different experiences. What I thought, could be interesting for the broader audience, which we shortly discussed, is basically go from the beginning of what I saw is like how you find the right people for your teams, like how do you define that, how do you find like the product market fit, and also like ICP, and how you define where you get like relevant opportunities or leads for your business. I think this is the three key main challenges most likely every SaaS business or startup has. And it would be cool if we can discuss that a little bit.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. I think when we prep for this, right, you mentioned that like one general theme you're very interested in is how do you learn faster than the sales cycle? So maybe give us an idea, at Zeotap, what's the ACV, what's the sales cycle, how many ops per rep do you typically have?
Yeah, average ACV is slightly above 250K for us, like usually 3-year transactions. So, the average transaction is like 750K plus. We have a sales cycle of an average like 9 months. So it's like proper large enterprise deals we have, which is like a slower sales motion. Majority of them actually also come through RFPs. So it's a lengthy and slow thing. And I think the main challenge in such enterprise sales notions is that as the average transaction takes quite a while, you have to spot patterns, or you have to learn potentially quicker than reality, because if you always wait for the results to happen, this takes like 9 to 12 months, and then you are like always behind the curve, right? So the most important thing is to spot things as soon as possible, and therefore like take decisions the earliest possible, because you cannot afford to wait until like actual reality happens. Specifically when you have like those long sales cycle. That might be completely different when you have like smaller transactional deals and you do them on a daily basis. That's completely different patterns where you can learn. But I think the difficult thing is how to actually like learn quicker than the sales cycle of like 9 or plus months. And
love it. I assume that's easy to say, but actually really hard to do. Right. So I'm curious, right? Like you mentioned, ideal seller profile, ideal customer profile, and, what channels actually drive a pipeline. Obviously all those are very much related to what you just said. Tell us a bit more about, how you define your ideal seller profile at Zeotap. How do you find it? How do you implement it? I would love to really dive in.
Yeah, so first I think we came up with this term, I don't know, half a year ago, because we were talking like a lot of like what is the characteristics we need in a candidate. In the end the team is one of the most important things, right? You need a great team and a great product. Other than that, you don't have a business. So obviously spending a lot of time in finding new talent which we can add to the team. And I think there's different dimensions, which is in the end with different criteria, but important to like all SaaS companies, I guess. So I think the smaller the company, the more important is actually like the team or the cultural fit to the team. Right? You always like you said in a team, you're successful in a team, like you win and lose together in a team. If you don't bring like the right players who like to work together, they shouldn't be joining in the first place because it won't be successful. So like how is this team fit on a cultural level actually work? Then I think
And
second
just a
dimension as
question,
well.
maybe just a
Yeah.
question there, like how do you, I mean, how do you incorporate that into your selection process, right? And how do you know what that is, culture fit?
Um, I think for us it's two things. So A is they should speak to a lot of different people, and not only like to the hiring manager and like another manager in the interview process, and that's it. I mean, spend time with their co-workers, and best case, spend physical time with them. And I think for us that's a key requirement that basically like I want to spend an evening with a candidate where we want to make an offer before we actually do it, and grab a dinner and a beer with them and like spend 2 hours in the evening. And I think for me, this is something you can't replace via like video chat or something. Simply doesn't work, right? You need to get a feeling for this people, have conversation outside of Zeotap and business, right? Simply get a feeling of how are they as people, what really like drives them, right? What is their background, what they want to achieve, what they do they fit in the team? Like, do we enjoy spending time with them? Do the others enjoy spending time with them and also grab a beer with them afterwards once they are like part of the team, right? And I think this is something, at least I don't know how you can replace that with actual like physical interaction and spending time with the people.
100%, yeah, 100%. So you do that with every candidate. You meet them in person, basically out of an office situation. Um,
Correct. I mean, I think we honestly we like coincidentally ran into it. Like we did it in the beginning, then we partially skipped that with a few where we also had like learnings from that, and then we actually formalized that saying, hey, this needs to be like a key requirement, and it's part of the process that we physically meet the people outside of a business situation and we spend time with them. And like best case, it's not only like one person from us, but let's go there with 2 or 3 people. I mean, it's not a fancy interview situation and we throw tricky questions at them for 2 hours. So it should be like a comfortable situation for us spending time together. And I think for both parties getting to know if that's a cultural fit and they want to spend like more time in that. I mean, you can compare that with dating. It's not that different, to be honest.
yeah, 100%. I mean, that sounds, I mean, actually, a lot of people talk about it and say, yeah, people are the most important, but then they have these very strict processes where they actually don't find out whether this is the case, right? And it's
Very
even
true.
hard to prove for. I'm curious, like any other learnings with regards to the ideal seller profile. I'm sure there's specific characteristics you look for, and you prove for, and then also, maybe as a follow up, like I'd love to go deeper into how do you then onboard and actually learn whether those folks work out. But maybe start with the first one. Yeah.
Yeah. So for us, I mean, I always refer to kind of like startup fit, which is
Mm-hmm.
hard to describe,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't quantify it at all, right? So it's like people who want to get their hands dirty, like roll up their sleeves, get shit done,
Mm-hmm.
try different things. Uh, okay if things fail because lots of things we do for the first time and we don't have the perfect solution for it in the first place, and therefore we fail. This is super and this is perfectly fine, but like people need to have the characteristics that they can accept that and they want to learn and grow together with the organization. I think to us that's actually the two key categories. I mean, there's others like you need to take a look at whether it's more farming, more hunting, what's their like vertical they're coming from, what's their industry, their product knowledge, right? This is all important aspects, but I would say by far the two most important ones is the cultural fit, and then also this like startup fit, if you will.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I think, everybody proves for being amazing at enterprise sales, and, that you can do a lot of different case studies around it. And that's super important. But then what is driving the people beyond that, right? What is essentially creating that grit, that energy that actually creates the desired outcome and also makes them really successful in their career at Zeotap, right? I think that's like sometimes really underestimated. And then, I mean, somebody joins, right? Like, I mean, like you have a 9-month sales cycle, right? Like, so how do you, like, what are the early indicators you look at to see whether somebody was a right hire or not?
I mean, the first and most obvious thing is if the cultural fit proves, right? Like how do they interact with the people in the office? Do they join us for a beer after work? Are they open-minded and approach new people like whom they need help from, right? So this very simple like human interaction in the team on a day-to-day basis. I think this is pretty obvious. And then it's the the first indications come from how pragmatic they are, how they approach certain things. I mean, we're 100% okay that they bring their own ideas, they try their own things, right? It's not like waiting for me or their manager to bring the first tasks, but people who are proactive, who want to learn, who like if they ask questions, if they ask like smart questions. I mean, usually that's a huge sign for me if people will be successful. And then I think it's more about those things than how long does it take them to create the first opportunity, or like how long does it take them to have the first customer or partner meeting or whatever, right? This is actually not so super important. We don't micromanage and track those KPIs. It's more the way how they integrate with the people, with the team, how proactive they are. That's, I think, to us the strongest indicator if people are fit in the very end.
And if you look back now, at what point can you like say with a high certainty that somebody will be successful? Like how long does it take? How many months usually?
Mm. That's a good question. I think it really depends. I mean, the worst thing I've seen is we brought someone on board who was like just there for 5 days, and on Friday we already let him go because it wasn't working at all. Um, and I mean, this was, I mean, 100% on us, right? We did the wrong hiring decision, not to blame the candidate. Uh, but I mean that was the quickest I've seen, and I would say within a month you know that, right? And people do mistakes. They don't do things like how you want them to do, which is also perfectly fine. But then it's very important to have like an open feedback culture and to see that, right? And to do like allow for change, give them open feedback, and then like allow them to adapt to do like this team, because I mean this, I think it's true for every startup. Like there's strong opinions, there's specific things which are like just true for that company or the other. You don't have that in a comparable with your like previous employer, and you have to adapt to this new way of how things are done, which is perfectly fine, and like just allow for like a certain adaptation phase. I think then later on in the sales process, I think usually there are not that many surprises. I mean, if someone did enterprise sales beforehand, and I think it's also part of the interview process that you get a feeling of they know how to present, they know how to pitch, they know how to structure a commercial offer, they have an understanding of how to negotiate in the very end. I mean, everyone has strengths and weaknesses, and not everyone like fills all those categories 100%, but that's also perfectly fine. That's why you sell as a team in the very end, and not as a, like just an individual contributor, a one person show. I mean, that doesn't exist in enterprise sales, I would say.
Love it. I think it's so good, and I really love this example of somebody you onboarded for 5 days and basically made a hard decision, but you said it's on us, right? You have to own it. I mean, you're basically responsible for hiring someone. You're responsible for making them successful. And yes, sometimes you're like that isn't a success, but that happens. But it shouldn't happen often, right? I think over time, you want to
True.
get better at this, and it's probably been a huge learning, I assume. I mean, maybe want to switch gears a bit. Like, would love to, maybe last remark on this. What I also find really interesting, right? All the fundamentals in enterprise sales, right? You almost take for granted, and you focus on the things that are really like fundamental attributes that make the people successful, and then also the fit into the team, which I think is really, really interesting, and I very much relate with down really deeply. Let's switch gears. Ideal customer profile. I mean, again, right? Like that's something I know every investor is asking again and again all the time. And then in reality, it often looks very different, right? In a very early stage, I think you often don't know what your ideal customer profile is, and then at some point you learn it and you find it out. Like, tell us a bit more how you approach this to ideal customer profile. Super curious.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, like everyone has it, or everyone has to have it as like part of the usual like VC process that everyone asks for it. I think for me the most important thing is that ICP is a learning curve. Right?
Hmm.
I mean, you can sit down in the early days of a startup, like define that on a blank piece of paper. Uh, I can guarantee it will change 180-degree over time because like you learn about your customers, you learn about your product highly likely evolves. You find like new use cases, you better learn like how to position yourself against competition. So I think this is the most important thing, that you're conscious about that it will and it needs to evolve over time, right? If you think you define it once and then it's set in stone, I don't think this is possible, to be honest. And then I think the two important things is that like once you define it, like you really focus to it, which also implies you have to say no to certain things, which is a hard thing because you're saying this is not part of our ICP. I don't know, making this up. You say like you just do B2C and you don't do B2B. And then suddenly like a B2B lead comes along and says, oh, this is super shiny, fancy brand. Perhaps we still do that. I mean, consciously say no to certain things that, and like focus your people, and like don't try to like celebrate all parties at the same time. Highly likely will not be successful. And the second, and I think this comes back to this continuous and quick learning, is like try to adapt it, like try to spot patterns, saying, hey, we've been successful with this and that use case, or with that and that vertical, or in that territory. Is that something which might be true for other customers as well? Or what can we learn to it? Can we make it even more specific, the ICP, than it was before? Like, do we have to change because we learned something where we didn't think of beforehand, in terms of the product might also add value to a vertical we haven't had in mind beforehand, right? And this, I think, it's just natural that that evolves, and you're open minded to that, and you like whenever you spot something, I think ask yourself, might that be a pattern? Is that something you
Hmm.
can repeat with others, or is that like just a one-off, which also might happen? And trying to figure that out, I think that most likely helps in like redefining your ICP over time.
And how do you do it? I mean, that's really hard, or?
I mean, there's no golden solution to that, to be honest. I think the thing is, it needs to be like in your daily life, in your processes, right? If it's not in there and everyone does what they want, then ICP doesn't exist, right? So it needs to be part of your sales process. It needs to be like you need to ask those tricky questions and also come to the decision that you say no to certain things, which is tough conversations, right? Because the AE usually says, yeah, this is the hottest and latest and greatest opportunity, super opportunistic, saying that let's jump on that. And then you as a team say, hey, look, perhaps it's not so super hot as you think right now. This is the following indication. Tell us, perhaps let's say no to this opportunity and then like decide that as a team consciously. And then I think in the management team, I mean, force yourself to like go through the list of opportunities on a regular basis and say like, hey, have we learned something in the last month? Was there something we spotted where there's a new learning, and bringing that back to ICP? And I think like doing that on a monthly basis is a very useful exercise and task. Saying, hey, has something changed? Have we learned something new as a team where we can get better going forward? And consciously take time for that. I mean, usually there's operational stress, and then there's quarter ending and 1,000 other things which are super important to get done by end of business. But I mean, simply reserve time for that and make that a conscious exercise. I think that's super important. At least I think we learned a lot in making that a priority. I think others can as well.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I know you're using an ICP scorecard to implement the ICP into your sales process, right? In your CRM. Super curious. I mean, it sounds like it has a lot to do with inspection, conversations, and then also spotting patterns. I mean, is that helping with the implementation? How do you make sure that people actually follow the ICP, know the ICP even, right? And it's not just an exercise that is somewhere hidden in Notion or another wiki you're using. Yeah?
Yeah, no, you're totally right. I mean, as you said, it's part of Salesforce, and it's like every opportunity has to have an ICP. Other than that, we don't accept it as an opportunity, and that's simply hard coded in the system. And then it's also like part of our process that we review that in the forecast calls. And I mean, the ICP is not static, right? It's not like set in there once and then it lives in there forever. And there's certain things which are not available as outside information, which are also part of the ICP scorecard. So we have to learn them through qualification meetings, through spending time with the customers, and like further fill that out. So I mean, this is a dynamic thing, and I mean, in the end, it's a sales management task to make that part of the regular like forecast cadence, to like review that on a recurring basis. And then, as you said, there's different category. Like for us, it's 8 different categories which we score, and we give different weighting to it. And therefore, we come up with an ICP score, which helps us to like also rate opportunities afterwards, right? So it's not like just the monetary value of an opportunity, which makes it important, or like the sales stage where it's in, but it's a combination of opportunity value, sales stage, and then also like ICP scorecard, which tells us how likely is that actually that we can convert that into an actual transaction, or is that like just wishful thinking, or was it like just wishful thinking from the very beginning? Because it should never have been an actual opportunity, because it's simply like no match for our product.
Yeah, I mean, this is great, right? I think there's always a challenge with implementing specific things on the process side, and the way you've done it and set it up, I think is really, best practice, and I think a lot of companies can learn from that. Super curious. I mean, are you using the ICP scorecard also to find these patterns, and if so, how?
Yeah, I mean, like usually what we do is we take a look at the highest and lowest ICPs, and to see like, hey, what actually like made them like to stand there, right? And then it's a lot of like brainstorming activity in the team to actually say, hey, we had this and that opportunity with like a super high ICP. is that which other companies might qualify for like such a score as well, or which didn't or won't, right? And at the other side as well, like the super low ICP score is when we still engaged, saying like, hey, should we have taken the decision that this is not an opportunity for us, and we leave that aside? Could we have done that earlier, perhaps? Right? Were there any like early signals we missed, and like how can we make sure that happens? It doesn't happen over and over again, because in the end, that's like simply a waste of time for the entire organization. If we spend time and money on opportunities where we know we can't be successful in the very end, because perhaps we can't deliver the value or we can't help them with their individual problem, and therefore, like we shouldn't be the vendor of choice in the very end.
Yeah, it's so important, right? Like you basically direct where your team spends time, and especially in enterprise sales, it's a lot of time per deal. And then typically it's not just one, but a variety of folks coming together to trying to win that deal, management attention. So being really good at that is probably paramount for the organization and go-to-market motion you're running. I'd love to, spend some time on basically taking that ICP and finding more like-minded, high-scored opportunities, right? Like, I think currently everyone in the market is facing pipeline generation challenges. Maybe let's start very basic, like, what are the main channels you're using, and then dive a lot deeper into, different aspects of pipe gen.
Yeah, so I mean, there's three departments, if you will, who are in the end then responsible for pipeline generation. So you have the partner organization, which for us is super important because lots of business is done with and through partners. Then you have the BDR or SDR, however you call that organization, which is most likely the piece where most of the companies struggle, because we're coming from this old cold email outreach, simply send an email and people reply and you jump on a meeting, which is getting harder and harder, because I mean, I think it's true for every one of us. We're getting like 25 of those emails every day, and you try to make your spam filter like better to like not manually delete them every day, because it's like just a waste of all of our time. So like, how does this function evolve over time? And then the third is the classical like marketing function, which has different dimensions, right? Going from events, going over like digital demand generation, but also of course like supporting the others in terms of like partner and BDR functions, and working closely together. So this is kind of like I think the usual pipeline generation channels. What is on top, and I mean this very much depends also, of course, on the situation of the company, is like how can you leverage advisors, investors, network? How can also like the AEs or other employees like use their network to get intros and to get new opportunities? This is something we also like try to embrace a lot, because I mean those kind of like warm introductions are super helpful in the very end to find new business opportunities.
And with regards to, I mean, you mentioned the challenge of outbound and sending emails. I mean, have you found an answer to that? I mean, and I mean, what's your view on it in general, right? Like, is that just a dead channel, or do you see ROI in it? Yeah.
I think it depends. So I think it's different country by country. There's a few country where it's still kind of works-ish. There's others, I mean, for us, I mean, specifically like German-speaking market or the UK, it's getting harder and harder. It's like super hard with like cold outreach to get something going. I mean, I have no idea how it will evolve over the next 12, 24 months. Like, if I would, most likely I would fund a company about it and create a product for that, or like consult about it. I don't know. What we are trying is basically use the BDR resources in conjunction with the other departments to try new things. So it's kind of marketing, organizing an event, and the BDRs like kind of like they fill this event, so they have a cool thing to sell, right? They not only ask for like an online 50-minute meeting to get a super cool presentation of our super fancy product. But there's something, hey, there's a cool event, there's a nice networking event, or like a nice dinner. So there's something to bring to the table which is tangible and not like just another 15-minute online video conference where you already have like 10 of this morning, so you don't actually need it, right? The other is also the prototype we are currently running of the BDRs working closely together with the partner organization and with our partners. So like how can they work together in person with our partners to like run workshops, to spend time with them, and like to find new opportunities together with them instead of like simply automating some tools and send out emails. I don't know, but I think we will not see cold emails like in the way how they're used today in like 24 months from now, because like everyone is like super tired of that, right? Like no one really wants that, and at least I don't know people where it's like really really working, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah, that's so interesting. I think, I mean, there's obviously a lot of details to that, and it probably depends on many different factors. But I think creating an offering that creates value, like a event or dinner, and especially in enterprise sales, right, where you have a few accounts and you have potentially the money to spend on high like customer acquisition costs, right, to go essentially indirect, is really interesting. And I think it follows the general notion of not just basically pushing for a sale, but rather pushing for a conversation, whether that's in real life or digitally. That's really interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And on channel, I think we could go a lot deeper on the BDR SDR, but I want to talk about channel as well, because I know that's a big thing for you guys. Curious what you do there. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the most important for us is to compare those different lead sources and to see where we get the best opportunities from, and also like where we should spend and focus our investments, right? And what I've seen in the past is that what I think is a mistake, people like just counting the quantity of opportunities or leads or MQLs or SQLs, or like however you want to name that, coming out of certain channels, and they like just compare quantity and they say, hey, this channel has the higher quantity, let's double down on this. This is our best lead source, which I personally think is not the smartest thing, because looking at the quality of the opportunities in the end is actually more important than like just the quantity, right? So can you tell that one channel provides deals which are bigger, which come with a like higher ACV in the very end? Does the channel provide leads or opportunities which travel faster, so you can close them at a shorter sales cycle? Or do certain channels bring you opportunities with a higher close rate? All right, so the likelihood of actually like doing this transaction is way higher, because an example, highly likely if something from your partner networks comes along, there's an actual opportunity in there. It has been pre-qualified by other people who have already dealt with that customer or that potential customer, right? So they've already identified like some kind of pain, and then they bring you into this opportunity. It's a complete different quality of opportunity when you like simply send out a cold email and have a first conversation, and they say, hey Tibor, this is a great product, let's perhaps have a follow-up conversation in 2 weeks, right? And actually like judging this quality in combination with the quantity and therefore take the decision saying, hey, where do we want to invest? I mean, as you said, I mean, those kind of like events or dinners or whatnot, I mean, it's an expensive investment. Is we can afford like a slightly higher CAC as the ACV in the end. I mean, this is like proper enterprise deals, but still, we don't have infinite amount of marketing budget, and we need to invest that wisely to generate like the most quality slash quantity pipeline out of that, right? And therefore, I think having like a proper scheme in place where you say this is the way how we rate certain opportunities, which highly likely is also very individual for all companies depending on what you actually sell, and therefore taking proactive decisions where you want to like spend your time and your money and revisiting that on a regular basis, I think is very, very crucial to success. I think it doesn't make sense if you say, hey, we do 24 budget planning now, and we say this is the distribution of money and human capital we want to do, and we keep that for 12 months regardless of what's coming, and then in the end of next year we review if that was the correct distribution. I think this is slightly stupid. So I think there needs to be like different mechanisms in place.
Yeah, we could probably spend another hour talking about the annual planning cycle we are all about to, go into. And I see this all the time, right? I think we will all want to be very close to the front line and understand what's working. And then often the top-down view is, okay, we have to grow by X% because that's what's, a good company looks like. And then let's, find a model that actually make that work, which I think, in 2023, everybody run into. And then end of Q1, everybody was already readjusting their annual plan. I mean, I understand there needs to be a budget, but that's a cost budget. And then, I think on the marketing and sales side, it's a completely different ballgame. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, there's so much to say here. I mean, we could, but look, maybe quick summary, right? So, absolutely love how you, summed up your ideal seller profile and really putting, finding the best quality folks, right? Not just on a functional, but actually attribution level and culture fit, to then essentially figure out, okay, where are, what is working today in terms of ideal customer profile, where are certain patterns that could potentially work, and then reiterate that into the pipeline generation. I mean, really, really love that framework. Before we, dash off, I mean, I'd love to ask you three main questions, right? Like, number one, what are your top three learnings? I mean, you've been doing this, your half your life, right? What are your top three learnings in terms of, your path towards becoming Chief Revenue Officer?
Top three learnings. So I think the first you summarized quite nicely when we spoke about the ideal seller profile. So it's about the people and the people working together, and you cannot like overestimate the impact of having like the right people in your team, making your team and your organization successful, right? So I mean, this is always priority one, nothing above that. I think this is the first. Then I think the second is the openness to like learn and evolve, which is kind of like true for every position. Right? I mean, like going in there saying, hey, I know that, I've seen that already once or twice, and I'll do that in the exact same fashion I've done it beforehand, highly likely will not work. And having this like open mindset to say, hey, things might be different here, things also like change over time, and let's try to learn as quick as possible and adapt as quick as possible. I think that's a big key to success. And the third one is mostly like having the right frameworks in place that you have like some data to back your decisions in the very end, right? Whether it's about the ICP, whether it's about the where do opportunities come from, like create those frameworks. They don't have to be like super scientific and 100% correct. Like they will never be. But like just that you have like some models in place where you can say, hey, this is our data models we have. That's how we take decisions as a business right now. This might also change next quarter, but like having that in place to be able to potentially take slightly smarter decisions than yesterday, I think that helps a lot.
Awesome. Maybe second, what are the top 3 metrics you look at?
Um, you mean like inside out or outside in? I mean, like outside in, I mean, usually like everyone wants to know, hey, what's your ARR, what's your NRR, and what's your CLV? And like everyone asks those 3 questions, and then they make the math. Um, uh, Inside out on a daily basis, I think it's more. I think it's the number of opportunities, like the pipeline value and coverage, and then mostly the I think pipeline conversion rates. I think that's the 3 things which I mean then is it goes down to the individual performance metrics of like all the people in there. But I think those are the 3 metrics which we discuss most of the time, I would say.
Okay, last one. Um, I mean, I know you worked on a few large deals. I mean, what was the largest deal you've ever worked on?
Largest deal. That was for retailer. I mean, that was the overall deal was 136 million. And I mean, I didn't sell it myself, right? And I wasn't the only salesperson on that. There were like 2 dozen of salespeople and at least the same amount of execs who were working on the deal. But I think that was the biggest one I ever worked with. Not saying it's a not saying it was the most rewarding. I mean, there's also like smaller deals which are more fun and where you're like personally like more proud of than simply the biggest one. But still, it's a number which most likely you won't remember. At least like I don't purchase things at this value too often, so like like a number I can remember quite good.
100%. Awesome. Well, look, I really enjoyed our conversation. I think it was so many interesting and thought through things, and I really love what you said about hiring and being able to track the best people on the team and make them successful, and that being the number one thing that is always above all, because I think as team leader, revenue leader, right? I think that is just so important. So thank you so much for your time. Really, really enjoyed this.
Thanks for having me, Anis. It was a pleasure.